Hello everybody and welcome back to another blind commentary of Overlord, episode 10. As per usual, outro time is there if you wish to skip. But, of course you won't skip, right? Yeah. True Vampire. Now that is going to be interesting to see. A vampire. It's going to be yet another adventure, I presume. It's going to be quite something to see whether Ainz will clash with the vampire in this episode already, or whether we'll have to wait a little bit. Well, let's just get on with the show proper. This is rather intriguing, seeing the NPCs go on a different adventure. I wonder whether this is pretty obviously commanded by Ainz, but I wonder what's the motive behind this, because it's obviously rather suspicious, I would say. At least to us. There certainly has to be some motive behind this. I just wonder what exactly it will be. All according to Keikaku.
あの男を私にいただしたから適当にからかってるだけ。だいたいペロロンチーノ様とあのチビの創造者ブクブク茶釜様はご兄弟ですし。
そうだったの。
Well, this is certainly, once again, I am quite intrigued by this, because it's pretty interesting to see, once again, some of the previous members of Nazarick being discussed like this. It's actually pretty refreshing to, once again, it has been a while since we've gotten some background information about them, but it's good to get that once in a while, so yeah, it's pretty good to see that. It's actually pretty interesting to see that they still play a role in the series, even though they most likely, none of the members of Nazarick actually are still in the game.
昔至高の方々がそんなお話をされていたんです。
It's actually pretty interesting if the title True Vampire, if that actually was referring to Shaltear. That is certainly one possibility, and I wouldn't be surprised about that. It's actually really nice to have an episode that probably is centered around the NPC. Well, it's kind of bad to call them NPC since they apparently now have souls, but you know what I mean. It's kind of refreshing to have an episode centered around them, actually. So I quite like it.
ガキにしちゃいいもん持ってんじゃね
汚い手で触りんせんでくんなまし。想像しいでありんす。
Once again, the show doesn't shy away from showing brutality rather openly, which is actually quite, I don't know what to think about it, that the fact that the show can be quite brutal once in a while. It's certainly a unique trait for the show, because you wouldn't think that a show that has so much comedy in it, that it would get so gory at some points.
ああ、名前を聞きたかったんでありんすね。シャルティア・ブラッドフォール。一方的に楽しませてくんなましな。
This is going to be quite interesting to see whether the strongest warrior in the kingdom actually has any chance of standing against the guardians of Nazarick. It would be quite something to see how exactly powerful the guardians of Nazarick actually are, because they are certainly they at the very least command quite the presence, so it would be pretty cool to see how exactly strong they are.
絶対的強者を気取る愚かなモンスター。
Oh man, while not exactly as entertaining as seeing magic used to crush people, it certainly is pretty entertaining to just see her slap the sword away with no effort. Curb stomps are quite fun once in a while. Or, all the time. Actually, they wouldn't be that entertaining all the time, but since the show has so many other driving motives behind it, it certainly is entertaining, even if it does contain quite a lot of curb stomping to it.
Oh yeah.
So, Shaltar's true form is actually pretty goddamn disgusting. That is rather interesting, I would say. Oh, I just recognized that little girl was actually someone very distantly acquainted with Lord Ainz. That's interesting. I've completely forgotten to comment because I've been just enjoying the spectacle here. It certainly is rather... Well, it is a spectacle, so it's rather entertaining to watch at the very least. So that certainly is a really good quality for the show to have.
とにかくまずはシャルティアの居場所を確認するのだ。
This certainly all has taken quite an interesting little turn to have Shaltar actually revolt. It certainly is very intriguing to see what exactly caused this, because I would presume that they are completely and utterly loyal, and it certainly is rather good to see Ainz actually approach this with the intellect that is very becoming of him, that he wants to make sure that the Nazarick will act not fall even if people revolt, and he wants to find out the reason for this. Okay then. So... that was a rather interesting episode. It was actually quite nice to see an episode that centered around someone other than Ainz for a change, because this allowed us to both see the personality of one of the Guardians, as well as seeing some of the background about one of the older members of Nazarick, and it also allowed us to enjoy a rather interesting spectacle of a different kind, even. So that was certainly quite interesting, I would say, and I actually really enjoyed it. So it was really quite an entertaining little episode. It was certainly very different from what has happened up until this point, and it certainly created quite a bit of contrast even. So it was quite different from, well, it was quite different from everything so far, and it also created a very special kind of tension in the show by having Shaltar actually revolt against the Nazarick, which is quite an interesting little twist. It certainly is very likely that some magic caused that to happen, but it's very unclear what precisely was the cause. But it will be really interesting to see them chase after this plot line and see what exactly are the causes for this and whether this is a risk. Like, it's pretty cool to see Ainz consider that this is a major risk for Nazarick just as a whole, because if this would happen to all of the rest of the NPCs, it would be rather remarkably dangerous, and it would cause the Nazarick to fall eventually. So it's a good episode. It's a really good episode once again, but it is very different, and it mostly focused on intrigue, which I certainly quite enjoy. So yeah, it's probably some holy magic that caused Shalter to revolt, but yeah, it certainly had. Also, we got to see Shalter's true form, which was rather disgusting, which I actually quite liked, because that just emphasizes the contrast between her true form and her fake form. So it was quite nice in that situation. Yeah, it's overall quite a nice episode. Mostly I really enjoyed the intrigue that we got from this episode about some new kinds of magic, and also about Ainz's plans about gathering martial artists and magic casters that use magic and martial arts that were not present in Yggdrasil, so he could probably either learn them or catalog them. It would be quite interesting to see that. But for now, I thank you all very much for watching. I hope to see you all in the future. Have a great day and stay awesome. Ganmu out. Thank you very much for watching.